It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at our first full week of movies straight from 1998, January 16th, 1998 to be exact. I know last week we looked at, the last week we looked at was Firestorm, and that came out that following week, but this is the first week where we have a full list of films that came out in 1998 officially, so we have 5 movies to look at here, so let's go ahead and jump on into it. And we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, Denzel Washington, starring in the supernatural thriller Fall. I mean, you get the feeling that the people who saw Shocker saw that movie and said, you know what? We could take this concept and instead of making it a straight up Freddy Kruegerish type of movie, we can make a different kind of serial killer thriller out of this. And that's kind of what you get here in this movie. Denzel Washington plays this police detective in Philadelphia who's investigating these occult murders committed by this apparent copycat killer. But as that trailer indicates, it's more than likely the spirit of this serial killer, played very well by Elias Koteas, who every time he gets into the soul of some person, he touches somebody else, and that person becomes the same person there. It's a really fun concept, and I think for the most part, the movie does a pretty good job of handling that. The execution overall doesn't work all the way through, though, and I think that's why the movie doesn't really have the true full potential that this would have been to make this a really, really great film. This is a really good idea. This is written by Nicholas Kazan, who gave us Reversal of Fortune, and also did stuff like Bicentennial Man. And I just saw the list here. Was one of the writers of Matilda. He did stuff like At Close Range. I mean, it's directed by Gregory Hoblit, and Gregory Hoblit is a guy that would later go on to direct stuff like Frequency. He did Primal Fear before this, Fracture, Untraceable. The movie overall, it's a good idea, just not an overall straightforward, well execution. I think the good idea in terms of a story here, I think it's a good idea for a story here, and I think the performances are what really pull the movie through. Like, you know, I've always said it, Denzel Washington's one of our greatest actors. In fact, I would consider him the greatest actor working right now, and he elevates this to another level. I mean, he's that good of an actor that he can elevate lackluster material like this to this level here. John Goodman's performance isn't really all that memorable in there. I mean, it's John Goodman doing what John Goodman usually does to make you like him. I mean, he gives a decent performance, but it's never anything too spectacular or anything. Even that trailer, it's kind of the main crux of his character in there. Like, he's not really that much of an engaging character, even though he has second billing behind Washington. Donald Sutherland's also in here. You see M. Biff Davids, James Gandolfini. Like I said, Elias Koteas really is great as the serial killer in this, Edgar Reese. And like I said, there's a lot of good potential here. I think really what it comes down to is that the first half of the movie, I think, is the strongest part. And then, usually with these type of thrillers, the second half is nowhere near as strong. And that really is the biggest flaw with the film. It doesn't stick the landing, I think, as much as they want it to. It has a good hook right away that sucks you in, but at the same time, it just doesn't really handle it well with the second half. I mean, it definitely could have been a whole lot better, and I really, really do think that the film really could have been a whole lot better than that. And you know, it even ends on really a stupid note. It has one of the most ridiculously stupid endings, like the last scene of a film that I've ever seen for a movie that's supposed to be taken so seriously. When I saw this, I was just kind of like, you got to be freaking kidding me, man! Like, I want to say it, but I don't feel like I should say it to you. I mean, you can look it up online if you really are that desperate to see it, but but once you watch it, you realize that, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. That is one of the worst, one of the worst ending shots you will ever see for a movie that's supposed to be taken so seriously. Like, it's something straight out of a comedy, honestly, but not a real movie like this. But, yeah, despite the best efforts of its stars, a good premise that starts off pretty strong in the first half. The second half is really where it drops down big time. It just doesn't have enough there to really carry it all the way through. I mean, it's a film that has so much potential, just bad execution when it mattered the most in the second half. So, that is Fallen. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Christian Slater, Morgan Freeman, and Randy Quaid in Hard Rain. Another story that has some really good potential to it, just bad execution when it matters the most. The basic plot of this, it centers around a heist and man-made treachery amidst a natural disaster in a small Indiana town, and in this case, it's a heavy rainstorm, and there's potential for a good idea here. These guys having this bank heist in the middle of a major storm, but just it doesn't know whether or not it wants to take itself seriously, or doesn't want to be more of a more lighthearted action movie. I mean, it feels like it's trying to do both. Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, Randy Quaid, Minnie Driver, Ed Asner, Betty White's in here, Richard Dyson from LA Law. I mean, it just doesn't know which direction it really wants to go with, and you never really know whether or not which direction it, like I said, you never know which direction it really wants to go to. It has a really good idea to it. A heist thriller taking place during a massive rainstorm with a flood and all that. That's a pretty awesome idea, but just bad execution just doesn't really work all the way through. Largely forgettable movie, and for good reason. So that's Hard Rain. Let's go ahead and move on to a much better movie that came out this weekend, after looking at some two duds right there. But this is probably the best new release that came out this weekend, and that is the comedy Half Baked. I mean, this is pretty much as straightforward as you can possibly get. I mean, you have three guys who are trying to get their best friend out of prison, and they go through these get-rich-quick schemes to try to get him out of there, including selling weed. And really, what more do you need to say about this movie? If you're not convinced by that premise alone, then you shouldn't watch this movie. This film obviously did not do well with critics back then, but it's one of those movies that give it time, and you actually watch it, and you realize that, oh yeah, this actually is much funnier than people are making it out to be. I mean, like, these type of movies back then were not easy to sell to critics, honestly. It was one of those things, it was like this with the Cheech and Chong movies, too. Like, those movies didn't do particularly well with critics, but those went on to have massive followings. Dude, Where's My Car is another movie that is very much of that type, even though they're not stoners in that movie. But that was a film that got thrashed by critics, but it grew into a cult following over the years, and case in point, this film does too. And, you know, Dave Chappelle and Jim Breuer, they work off each other very well. This is the second time they've worked off each other. The other one being the short-lived Home Improvement spin-off Buddies, which that didn't last because, first of all, how do you do a spin-off of Home Improvement with these two guys involved in that? Like it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to do that, and you can see why it didn't last very long. But I mean, this is a funny movie, man. I mean, just so many great memorable lines. The scene in the restaurant with Guillermo Diaz, Harlan Williams, Jim Breuer, Dave Chappelle. These guys work off each other so well. I mean, there's just a funny concept here overall. It just has a phenomenal cast to work with. Cameos by a ton of great people. In fact, Bob Saget, who has a cameo in this, turns out when they filmed this movie, they were also filming at the same time was Bob Saget's Dirty Work, which I think is a far superior movie. We'll get to that one eventually later in the year. And they all stayed in the same hotel, and Bob Saget eventually ended up doing an uncredited cameo for this film. What's funny is that they actually asked Harrison Ford to do a cameo, but he declined because apparently he's one of those prolific stoners that everybody in Hollywood pretty much knows about. Like, that's a fun little fact for you right there, to know that Harrison Ford's a pothead. But at the same time, there's nothing really wrong with that, because you know what? It would have been funny if they got him in there, but they didn't. He didn't do it. But still would have been funny to see, though. But other than that, though, like, really, I mean, what more do I gotta say about this movie, man? This is a friggin' hilarious movie. I mean, it's so over the top. They know it's silly, it's stupid, it's straight up ridiculous. It's fully right there. It was just ahead of its time. It's a film that I think was way too ahead of its time. If you had somebody like Judd Apatow's name, or even somebody like Phil Lord or Chris Miller, nowadays this would probably be a highly acclaimed film. But back then, nobody knew who Dave Chappelle really was, honestly, except for that guy who was in the Nutty Professor movie. But it's gone on to have a cult following, and Dave Chappelle has had a good following for a number of years. So it's just a great movie, man. I love it, man. It's a really, really funny, silly, over-the-top movie, and I love it every minute. I love every minute of it. So with that said, on to the next movie, and that is Star Kid. Here's another one of those movies you used to see it put on television all the time on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and I never went to see it. I never wanted to see it on video. I never saw it in theaters. I never saw it on video. It just really didn't. It didn't really appeal to me. Plus, I don't know. It has Joseph Mazzello from Jurassic Park and The River Wild, and I don't know. To me, it kind of looked like a mix between something like The Flight of the Navigator and what was the other movie that tried to be something like this? Maybe kind of a precursor to Iron Man. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I just never really got into it. I never really wanted to see this movie, and I've never really seen this movie in full. Like, I've only seen the little bits of the commercials here and there, and nobody's ever really said you need to watch Star Kid. You're missing out on something special. Everybody that I've ever heard anybody talk about it, it's just kind of like it's there. It's not bad, but certainly not great either. But that's what I kind of feel like when I see the trailers for this. Not good, but not bad either. I mean. Would you believe that this is also made by the same guy that gave us Dr. Giggles? Bet you didn't think of that one, but I don't know. I mean, I've never heard anybody say it's a cult classic, it's something that you really need to get back into, or something like that, but no, it just never really stuck out to me, and honestly, I haven't seen it, so I can't really say if it's any good or not, so quick one on that one, that's Star Kid. So let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here, and that is Pretty Village, Pretty Flame. So this is a film that's set during the Bosnian War. It's a Serbian film. It tells the story of Milan, part of a small group of Serb soldiers trapped in a tunnel by a Bosniak force. And through flashbacks, the lives of the trapped soldiers in pre-war Yugoslavia are shown, particularly Milan and his Bosniak best friend Hali, becoming enemies after having to pick opposing sides in the conflict. I've never seen this movie, so I don't really know if it's any good or not. But it's got a lot of acclaim to it. I mean, it's got a lot of good reviews to it. It was highly praised when it came out. Was nominated for several awards. It was actually submitted as the Serbian entry for the Best Foreign Language Film Academy Award nominations, and I don't think it won it. I don't think it even got nominated, honestly, because I'm not seeing anything that said that it got nominated. So maybe it didn't. Probably didn't nominate it, honestly. But well, like I said, I don't really know too much about it. I don't know if it's any good or not. I mean, it's got the good reviews behind it. It could actually be something kind of decent, but I don't know too much about it to really delve more into it, so just wanted to bring that up because it came out this weekend, so that's Pretty Village, Pretty Flame. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we have the Spice Girls making their big screen debut in Spice World. We have Phantoms with Ben Affleck and Peter O'Toole, the pairing that we all wanted to see in 1998 apparently, but Swept from the Sea is also a film we'll look at. The Gingerbread Man, Slapping in the Sneakers, and Fallen Angels. So 6 movies to look at next time around, and we will delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos on this channel. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.